appreciate it. It's nice to see a good crowd here. We have a few more people trickling in, but I'll just keep talking. So I want to say thank you to people who made it possible for us to have this program this evening. In particular, I would like to thank All Care Health for providing us with their community room, and Josh Ballack in the back there, thank you for arranging that for us. And Debbie Jarrett is here at the All Care Pays table. And I just wanted to let you know that offer one of a kind program here in Southern Oregon called All Care Pays. It provides coordinated medical and social services to those who want to continue living in home or community environment despite having chronic health needs. Participants have to reside within the All Care Pays service area of Josephine and Jackson County, which one I guess you guys are. You can contact Debbie right at the table back there, and she'll provide you with more information. And the other folks I would like to thank this evening are Oregon Humanities. So we are able to have this program thanks to Oregon Humanities, who brought together our panel to talk about getting older and staying connected through their consider this series across the state. And Adam is and I'll hand the mic over to him. But I cannot say enough about how fortunate we are to have such an active communities council in the state of Oregon. And we do have a couple board members here. Teresa Stover, Oregon Communities Board, and Kim, last name Young, on Oregon Communities Board. So thanks to them. Excuse me. Over to you.
Great.
One more thing. Yeah. This is the library table. We have library books.
Great. Thank you, Kate. And thanks everybody for telling me if this is better. What was that? Lower. We'll keep it there. Is that volume enough? No. We'll try that. See how it goes. All right. Thanks for coming. As Kate said, my name's Adam Davis. I'm with Oregon Humanities, and before doing anything else, I want to say thanks to Andrea, Cano, and Fred Grewe for being here to do some talking about getting older and staying connected. Before we start talking, I actually wanted to ask you a couple questions and then to say a couple quick thanks. And then we'll jump into a conversation, and then hopefully we'll also get more of a discussion going. Long questions. So is it all right if I throw a couple questions your way, maybe to respond with noise, either applause or hands? And since the topic is getting older and staying connected, the first thing I want to ask is if you feel like you are at a stage of life where you consider yourself either old or older, could you make a little noise? All right. If this is your first Oregon Humanities program, a little bit. And if you've been to one before, either consider this or a conversation project, can you make a little noise? All right. And maybe one last question, that is, if aging has created what feel like significant challenges to feeling connected to people or places you want to feel connected to, could you make a little noise? Okay, they're deliberately increasingly complex questions. So that's part of it. But I also wanted to help give Andrea and Fred a sense of thanks for coming in. Yeah, thanks for being here. Please, wherever's good. A couple quick thanks. First, the National Endowment for the Humanities helps make this and lots of programs around the state possible. This is part of a United We Stand initiative. I also want to thank the Oregon Cultural Trust, which funds stuff around the state, and the Oregon Community Foundation's Susan B. Hammer. So they make these kind of programs possible. Just want to say thanks. Say more about Oregon Humanities towards the end. Right now, I think I want to jump into the conversation. And again, getting older and staying connected is what I hope we'll talk about. But the way I was hoping we could start, and we're going to share one mic. So I'm going to give it to Andrea first. And the question I actually thought was might seem oblique or a little indirect. I wanted to ask if you can remember as a kid what being old looked like. Like when you were young, you remember, did you have a sense, that person is an older person, and here's what I see that being?
I think it would be my grandmother Rosa. She was the oldest person I knew, and she passed away when I was 6 years old. So I look at my hands now, and I've got Rosa's, the wrinkly paper brownie hands, and that was her. It was such love and care. I just lost her too soon.
Hmm.
Similarly, when I thought of it was my grandparents, I'm Fred the Third. Oh, I'm sorry, I hit that. I'm Fred the Third. My grandfather used to call me Fred the Turd, and I loved him. I mean, he was a fabulous. He sold caskets for the Erie Casket Company. He drove all over Virginia to Florence selling caskets, and he was a wonderful man. And he always had candy in his pockets for myself and my sisters and my grandma Edie. They were. They also always a feeling of safety, comfort with them, trust that it was safe to be around them. So that was my first experience. And my grandfather Fred Sr. died way too young. So.
So it's interesting already to think, Andrea, you pointed to your hands. So in a way, about aging, maybe think a little bit about the body. And you already talked about the too soon departure. So departure, maybe thinking about aging, and also you talked about caskets. And so in a way, we're already getting into some of the things that aging is going to include as we talk about it. And I hope we're going to be able to talk sort of frankly and honestly, especially as we think about staying connected. And can you talk a little bit, Andrea, about the work you're doing, and especially with aging in mind? You've done an interesting mix of work, and right now you seem to be working both in Mexico and some in the States, again, with people who probably understand themselves to be aging.
Well, I think it helps that I'm right there with them. I mean, with every gray hair, I said I'm losing ability or memory. I am spending 6 months down in Mazatlan, pastoring a church, interdenominational church of people who fly down from Canada and the U.S. and those who live in Mexico, the English-speaking worshiping community. So here they have the ability and the resources, and it doesn't cost a whole lot. So people are going down there so the pension will stretch a little bit better. And it's warm and it's healthy, and it's part of the element of being there for their well-being. Not unlike what we do here as we seek the places where we can all be safe and comfortable and healthy. And so,
Okay, cool, thanks. Fred, you want to talk a little bit about what you're up to relative to maybe the aging? A bad handoff at a relay race.
It was.
Yeah.
We dropped the baton. So to give you some context, I was a hospice chaplain for 17 years here in Jackson, Josephine County. And over the years, I've written 3,000 folks that have gone on to whatever is next. And I retired about a year ago, and I am now an interim pastor as well at a church in Ashland, Oregon. And the makeup of that congregation, I would say the median age is probably, I don't know, 65 or 70, something like that. We had a student from SOU that visited yesterday, so that dropped it way down when they came in the door. But so yeah, and I turned 71 this year. So a lot of the work for the last almost 20 years has been with folks in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 100s.
So you both talked about the work you're doing and where you are in your life. And I guess I want to ask, at what point do you feel like you know that you yourself are getting older? Is there a point at which you were like, yeah, I'm getting older. And I say that as someone who, so I'm 52, and I'm certainly aware that when I get up out of a chair, those first few steps feel very different than they feel. And so it's landed for me in the past 10 years, but I don't know if that's like, does getting older register as a way of thinking about where you are and how does it show up?
Every single day. Every single day. I mean, it's the element of just the memory elements of it, the moving. I can't be running. I can't be in a path that's full of rocks. I need to be holding on to a handrail or something like that. So it's the physical pieces of it. It's the memory. It's not so much my heart. I'm thinking my heart has become a lot more deeper and more loving and caring for all that's around me. So that is a good thing for me. One of the things I want to share is that I heard a statistic that there's going to be more of us. So by year 2034, there will be more people over the age of 64 years in the state of Oregon than under the age of 18. Think about that.
Brett, so could you speak up a little bit?
I can.
Thank you. I can hear.
Oh, good.
No, the guy, you're hard to understand.
I'll speak up.
You can understand.
All right, thank you.
The two old folks, I can understand.
I'm glad. You could say the handsome guy and the not so handsome guy.
I'll go along with that. See, I was out of high school when you were born.
I was born in 52, brother.
Where were you?
Yeah,
Well, I was born in 36.
All right. I'll defer to this. But I would say I've heard Andrea talk about this, and I hope she's going to talk about it. Coming in and out of aging or feeling old. If I'm sitting in the morning having my coffee, reading, I don't feel old at all. It's only when I have to get up and go to the bedroom, which is so much more. That I feel I'm aging. Sometimes I do have to watch balance. Sometimes, most of the day, I don't feel old at all. I don't think about it. It's only a moment if I just lose my balance slightly, I gotta watch the guy. Or somebody when I look, who the hell is that? Where did he come from? I mean, or what I really recognize it is like if you go on Facebook and I see people I went to high school with, I go, boy, they don't look good at all. They really got old. And then I realize, well, I bet I look the same to them as they're looking to me. So it's an in and out kind of thing. It's not a constant deal.
I agree with you. I mean, it's only when I have to do something different, and all of a sudden I'm reminded of years. And I think the other is when we're talking about ebb and flow, we do age in, age out every single day. I mean, I think I'm right on top of the tech things I need to do with my computer, and then something comes through, and I said, I don't know anything about that. I mean, I've spoken to various communities, and I heard from a group of Latinos last week, and I said, just getting to know my iPhone. And now my grandkids are doing something else, and I don't know how to swipe left or right. I don't know any of that. So I think there are things that get settled, and then another curveball comes in that we're not quite ready for, or even getting medical supplies. You don't get computer anymore. You have to go online to get things, and you're going, oh mercy! So disconnect, age out.
Oh, and the other one that annoys me. Go to a restaurant, you don't get a menu, you don't get a waiter person, a waitress person. You have to order through your telephone to get your food brought to your table. That's one. Yeah, that one. I am an old man when it comes to that.
So yeah, you just talked about curveballs, and that made me think of a metaphor. Sometimes you probably see a curveball coming, and you decide, you know what, I'm not going to use my phone to read a menu at a restaurant.
Yeah.
You decide you're going to take it and let that bitch go. How do you decide in your 70s or your 60s or your 80s? How do you decide when, yes, I'm going to figure that one out and I'm going to try to catch up, or I'm content to let that go by? I need to give this to one of you.
It is about choice. It is about choice. It's about understanding your own agency. And yes, I darn well at my age, 75, I'm going to make those choices. I'm not going to have everybody make those choices for me, but I know that at some point there are things that are not negotiable. There are not anything that if I'm getting wisdom from a doctor or someone who knows things a little bit better than I do, then I have to honor that. It is a process of reciprocity with anyone that we're running into, whether it's our family or our friends or a stranger on the street. It is about that sense of how we connect with one another. How do we relate to one another? And I think that I am learning from the people who are older than I. A lot of my friends, I'm learning from people younger. So the ebb and flow of that understanding is really becoming, I'm going to say, a lifelong process. I mean, we just started when I was 6 years old, but I think it is more evident now, particularly after COVID. There were a lot of other learnings which we can share more too.
To go a little further with that, I think this is one of the huge things about age. Lose control over choices that we have easily made in the past. We don't have control like that anymore. And I learned that working as a hospice chaplain. When I would be with folks, when the doctor was the car key, that's awful. But it's emotionally a lot more awful than physically awful. Because the emotion, now I'm needy. I can't go to the grocery store without having to call somebody. I can't. So choices like that get taken from us, and we don't get to make anymore. That's incredibly painful. For my money, that is one of the hardest things. So the car keys, and when I can't walk without support anymore, or pain, there are huge emotional minefields with that stuff. Or that I need help breathing. That becomes another huge one. And when I can't live alone, I mean, the way that affects my ability to choose and to be the author of my life, that is one of the most difficult, frightening, and opportunistic aspects of age.
So what to do with that feeling, the feeling of those challenges you just named very vividly, how to retain a sense of autonomy, control, when certain external manifestations of control are changing even away.
You're sparking the reminder of a conversation I had with a dear friend. She's 91 years old. And at the start of summer, she was just in despair of her life. She'd been married twice. She lost her partner, the last one, about 6 years ago. And she just didn't want to wake up anymore. She was living, she still lives in resident community, and she was at this point wading deeply in the waters of her impermanence. For her kids were grown and all of that. We were all worried. Somehow she snapped some realizations and fell into a type of really unique therapy, not only for herself, but also for her family. She came to such deep realizations of what is really worth waking up for every day. And she made the decision, I'm not going to be that woman yesterday. I'm going to be hopeful. And my final days, have my final days as a fulfilled. So, you know, I'm learning from her.
What are the conditions that make it more likely?
Okay.
Okay, we'll try to project, and if it's not loud enough, please let us know. Okay. And back here. Great. Hopefully you can hear me too. Good.
Thank
You're
you.
better.
Okay. Go this way. So I was just going to ask Andrea, in your example, your 91-year-old friend had the kind of realization that you're learning from. I wonder, like, how can we make it more likely that we're going to have that kind of realization, or what conditions might need to be in place externally that will help us come to that? Can I go Fred, to you with that, and then back to it?
Oh, yeah, yes, that is my sweet spot. Of everything I learned, and I've been a student of this for the last 20 years. When I got to, I was hired in Ashland, Oregon, to be chaplain at the hospital for the hospice. And when I got here, I was dumping dirt and go visit these hospice people that were dying. And I would go, oh boy, that's a shame. Oh boy, that's, oh, I'm sorry. And I felt like an idiot. And so I started to investigate how do we make the kind of change Andrea referenced. And it really boils down to, and what I love about the topic that Adam came up with, it's about connections, about belonging. What helps us through our fear is the human relationships and the belonging that we have with other people, which Andrea referenced in this forever 91-year-old friend. So look, I think when we lose our autonomy and our control over our lives, there's a grieving period. It's hard. We may go, into a cocoon for a little while because it's just hard. It's our relationships that bring us out of that. I remember one lady, a Medford lady, was on hospice. I went to see her, and she told me, about a month ago, my doctor told me I've got pancreatic cancer and I've got like 3 months to live. And she said, you know what? I laid in bed and cried and cried and cried. I was angry. I didn't want to do anything. And my daughter came in one morning and she said, what do you want for breakfast? And she said, I screamed at my daughter, I don't want any damn breakfast. And if I had a bag right now, I'd just stick it over my head. And her daughter looked at her and said, paper or plastic? And she looked at me and she was laughing and she's telling me this story. She goes, how do you stay depressed when somebody treats you that way? So she said, I just snapped out of it and I decided I'm going to live as long as I can, as good as I can. And it was her daughter that threw her lifeline to help pull her out. And I think what gets us through are the relationships and the belonging and the connections we have, which is why I suggest spend your time on those investments right now, because we're all going to need them. So whoever it is you love in your life, who's ever important, let them know. Invest in those relationships, because we're all going to get to those dark places, and we're going to need somebody to yank us out and invest in them now.
So, yeah, Andrea.
Well, it isn't just a continuum. I mean, it's flow. We've been talking about connecting. I think there's a process of also disconnecting, reconnecting, and it's just a very adaptable process. And you said, how do we manage some of this? Also, being nimble and flexible. The people that I've had conversations, I've just been so stuck, not wanting to. I realized I get old so quickly. I didn't realize I would get here and not get off of that. Well, you are here. Now where do you go? So the movement, digressing, going forward, going sideways, it is the element of our own mobility of mind, body, heart, and spirit in ways that we haven't. We come this far. We're creative people. There's incredible resources that we have at our disposal. And I think the other is that when we look at even the demographics of Oregon, immense diversity we have of cultures and people coming in from countries to learn from each other, to learn how we're doing that. What can we do to support one another in ways that we haven't thought to before? We kind of manage things that can be gone from one generation to the other, right? And when we start to intersect, when we marry somebody else from another family or another state, I mean, it's a process of being open and curious and creative. And the other term is recreate.
It's interesting. Both of the last comments you've made are making me think both about my relationship with my parents and my relationship with my kids. And I guess I was thinking of two things. One was a few years ago with my daughter, who's now 16, but she was probably 12 at the time, and I was walking to school with her in the morning, and I thought we still had a ways to go on the walk, and she just said, "This is where you stop."
Ah,
I don't want to be uncool by having my dad with me at school.
Yeah, yes. Thank you for spelling that out more fully. Yeah. Um, so in a way, what that makes me wonder though is about I hear you talking about the importance of connections and even connections across generations. But as someone who's feeling the challenges coming from younger generations about when they want me there and when they don't, how do you navigate that?
with a lot of grace and patience and understanding. It is painful when you were close to your grandkids and then it's this and all of a sudden it's really like this and maybe at some point we'll be back again, right? And I think these are some of the elements of our own emotions. When we feel less than appreciated, our roles shift. It is about the meaning making that we have is how we again reconnect with a different
Mm.
purpose and relationship.
Mhm.
Yes. I would say part of it is learning to read the human beings in your life that you love, being aware of what spatially is comfortable for them and not. And that changes. It changes with me. Some days I wake up and I'm just grumpy, and my wife and dog go, "Stay away. Dad's in a mood." And then other days it's, "Where is everybody? Come on, let's talk." So we're all fluid. We're not, none of us are static. That's part of it. I've also learned old technology can be very helpful. Writing personal notes to people, even young people, love to get something in the mail with their name on it. And it's not in front of everybody else. Nobody is around watching, but it can become a keepsake. So old technology can be helpful. And the other big thing for me is I'm always trying to see what is beautiful, special about the people that I care about, and I tell them about that. See, it's one thing if I say, "Andrea, I love you." Well, that's nice. But if I can say, "Andrea, I love you because you are a wise woman and you have cared for generations, and I love how you are open to it." If I can say why I love Andrea, now there's a hook to connect that, and we can become closer. And so I'm always looking for what is it that's beautiful and special about the people in my life, and I want to tell them that. I want to remind them of that so that when I call or come by, I'm not a nuisance. I'm going to tell them how wonderful they are. And it's real. It's got to be real. You can't just make up pretty stuff to make it sound. It's got to be real. But that helps.
Mhm. And let me flip that and ask, how much is it helpful to you to hear that?
Well, I think because I've also been a chaplain and I know we have a tendency to really be sharing and we're not as good as receiving,
Mm.
right? I mean, it's just the reciprocity element of caring for one another. I mean, and we come from different influences from our culture, we come from our faith understanding, different ways of being with each other and being for each other. Sometimes we're not as receptive or we don't know what to do it ourselves, right? And I'm learning. And I think the other piece of connections I want to kind of throw into is what we do with our pets, animals. I mean, they are not hearing all the well, maybe some of them understand, talk back and forth, probably. So that's the other piece of it. Just what are the living beings in our environment that are absolutely important to us and how we relate to it. I didn't mean to diminish the most profound messages that we need to share with our loved ones.
No, cats are huge. They're enormous. I've got two dogs. They're watching right now. Toot Toot, I love you. 6 pound miniature shot. He's a standard group, I gotta tell him. But yeah, they're important. But it also it's like so much of the paradox of life. When we give, also recipients. It's the old, Jewish conundrum. Is there a pure mitzvah? Is there a pure good? Is there a good deed without selfish motivation? And And the answer is no, because every time I do something good, I feel good. It's like there's something we always get back. Anything we're doing to invest in relationships, which I've learned are the when I'm in with 3,000 folks at the end of the line, and when they get there, there is nothing important than those human connections and relationships. And so while I have energy and time, I want to invest in that now. I know that's the goal at the finish line.
So let me ask another question that's kind of, I think, a hard question, but that's part of what we're here for, I think. And that's, so connection often feels like a very positive word, especially in these contexts. Relationship feels like the thing we want. But as is the case with good deeds too, sometimes there's burden that comes with it. Even thinking about the setting we're in and thinking about healthcare. And so I want to ask a question about how to negotiate or navigate the sense that we might be a burden.
That is something that continues to percolate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it happens in different cultures. I mean, some of the people I talked to recently said, I don't want to be a burden with my children. Well, I know within the Latino community, we would never think that our grandparents and elders are burdens to us. So we've got to figure out how that unfolds a little bit. And yeah, I'll throw it to you because
For me, it is. I call it the great American mortal sin. Whether you're religious or not, the great fear in our culture is to be needy, to be a burden. That is, it drives everybody I know crazy. And here's a little secret: we're all needy, every one of us. Some of us are just better at hiding it. As we get older, our ability to hide it decreases, which is drives us crazy. But the word I use instead of burden, there's an obligation. But my beautiful wife, Nancy, who's watching right now on YouTube, when we were dating, we had this thing. She's a Zen teacher. She's a brilliant woman. And so we had this thing. When you love somebody, when you're in relationship, you have obligations. That's part of it. When you love somebody, you're obligated. I'm obligated to my son. My son's in trouble. He calls me. I got to do something because I love him. That's not a bad thing. That's part of the price tag. That's part of the freight of loving people. We are obligated. And making healthcare decisions, making those choices, involving them in that, that's part of the obligation of being connected. It is not always fun. It's not always easy, but it's just part of the package.
You think there are different obligations that you feel more strongly as you sense yourself?
I think for me is to be as clear with my family and my son about where I am. I mean, we have a tendency to be, we're very strong and resilient, resourceful, especially women right now, really in our space, and women who come from different cultures as well. And the most important is to be as open and honest, and I use the term reciprocity, that there's a reciprocity in the conversation. So it's not just a one way, that we're actually exchanging critical information for each other as we move into our sunrises and sunsets. And we can do it not just in conversations. I mean, we can do it in music or with art or have something that sparks that moment. I mean, it's just really hard to sit down even with my son. I said, Mijo, let's just start talking about this. Sometimes we're not there. And and then and maybe we're there with some of our siblings or some of our sons and daughters. So, the multiplicity of people in our universe can be a little bit more complicated to have this conversation. And some may resonate with that more than others. Even when we talk about, the end of life uh, wants, plans that we have, it's really hard for families to understand that and to begin to honor that. So it's a process, and I don't think you wait till you got gray hair to start talking about this. This is stuff you need to start talking around the dinner when your kids are young or teenagers. And it's also a matter of understanding for me, death isn't a medical death, it's a sacred death. So the sanctity of how we relate to each other, how we bump into each other, how we fight, we and argue, settle is really, really important we are family. It's also meaning coming up with technology. I mean, the element of burden, like you said, well, we're looking at needs. And it's also what is our hopes. And to turn that grammar, to turn that vocabulary in ways that resonate and to encourage the different types of, well, conversations that would help inform us.
What do you think about the question of obligation? And like, do you feel a different set of obligations now than you did 20, 40?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But part of the thing, look, I've started to exercise again. I'm obligated. My wife wants me to live a long time. She likes having me around. If it was me, I'd sit on the couch, eat pizza and ice cream, and not get out of my pajamas. But I have a relationship, and so that's not helpful for that relationship. That's an obligation. I have obligations to put financial things in order. I want to make sure there's monies for my family if I'm not around. I want to make sure they're going to be cared for. I want to. So yes, it's all part of the. But it's what makes life sing. It's what makes you get out of bed in the morning. It's the people in our lives. For me, this is my definition of meaning, which gets to this as well. For me, meaning involves what I do with and for others. For all of my and so with that is obligations, but it's also joy, it's celebration, it's screaming and yelling, and it's I don't want that on my pizza, and you could have it's all negotiating. When can I talk to you? When can I not? It's the magic and the mystery of being alive.
So you just said meaning is what I do with and for others, and now I think I want to push it a little bit off the individual to the communities that you live in, and maybe this community, and like what might the community you're in, whether it's Grants Pass or Ashland or Portland or Mazatlan, like where do you see there being more room for the community or the civic space you're in to be more with and for? Are there specifics you can point around?
I'm maybe not so much the specifics, but I'm very cognizant, and of course, the U.S. General Surgeon came out with that report about loneliness, an epidemic of loneliness that we have in this country. So we need to figure out who is lonely, who's wanting those connections, who's being left out. Now, that's one side. There's part of it when I want to be just weaving my and coming out. I need that agency as well. And that's really important. The other, and I'll just say that I know those experiences of people. A lot of folks in this area lost their homes and things in those fires. I know there's somebody here who's from Lahaina who lost everything. So how do we start? How are we very cognizant of people who have to start from ground zero? Whether it's just they've lost everything or they lost a partner or a job. I mean, loss is also a heck of a catalyst for us to move and to start to respond. But it's again being aware and opening our eyes and our heart to what is happening in this community and to also lift those good things that people need.
As someone in Southern Oregon,
Oh, very well. In my current job, all right. Interim pastor means I'm a placeholder. I'm here for 2 years until we get a real pastor to show up. So I'm just sort of helping all things together. And at the church I'm working with, we have, as I say, a lot of older folks, a number of whom are losing mental abilities. All right, so they're having mental decline. We've got a number of folks in our congregation that their partner is 80 or 90 years old, and now they're a full-time caregiver of somebody who's 80 or 90 years old. You can't do that 24/7 when you're 80 or 90 years old. So for me, it's about how as a community, this is a big focus of our congregation right now. How can we support each other in this? We have to focus on declining physical abilities and mental abilities. And so we're organizing to make sure we're looking in on each other, helping provide meals for each other, rides for each other to the job. The connection that we do alleviates the loneliness, helps alleviate the fear. Now, it doesn't cure it, but it helps tamp it down. And so that's a huge effort in our current congregation of just recognizing who we are, what we need, and how we do that. And speaking to the wisdom of Andrea, there's sometimes I don't want people knocking on my door, bringing me a meal. I don't need it today. And so learning to have space for that grace for each other is really important. But we are certainly Ashland is an elderly community. We have a lot of young folks, and so learning to care for each other, be involved with each other. I know one of the great things in Ashland community wise, noted, are the early classes, the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. And I know they brought you some Kate. They brought you some material for the library today. There's like 1,200 senior citizens in Ashland that have lifelong learning stuff they do together. It's vital. That's important.
And I'll just add a little bit. The element too is just to remember the I word, to be intergenerational. How that really plays out in our communities. Knowing that there is a space for every kind of generation to kind of do their thing, but to really look, where are the convergences? Where are those points of connection when we really need them? And I just wanted to say, Fred, I was so tickled to see the photos of the Ashland Halloween parade, where you saw gradients of ages and people and creativity, and they may not have known each other, but they dressed up. I mean, whole families dressed up in costumes to be a part of an event that was extraordinary. Like,
So it's interesting because the parade feels like an example of the kind of
Yeah.
connection and togetherness. You both talked about the congregation you're a part of, and you also, I guess, talked a little bit about the library. I guess I'm wondering, where else do you see opportunities for aging people to connect with each other and with other generations? What are the other institutions, places, uh, habits where you see that happening or where it could happen more?
well, I mean, because I think the demographics of Oregon. I mean, Portland has been a federal resettlement site for 50 years, so you see all kinds of folks coming in. It started with the Southeast Asian folks, and then it moved into the Soviet Union, Slavic people, most recently in Afghanistan, and Ukrainian people. Places like Hillsborough and Beaverton, where the workforce, people, Intel and Nike and Tectonics, brought in a lot of international folks. So you see a lot of connections in various festivals, in various honoring of special days. I mean, Asian New Year all engages a whole lot of, from Surrey to Ashland, Klamath to Hermiston. I mean, there's just all kinds of evidence of people not only events, but the invitation and the welcome of everybody else to kind of come together. So I see that. I think in generations where we probably have a little more work to do, but since we're all going to be majority people in 10 years, that possibility.
I think some of the things we've highlighted, but also there are volunteer groups that help. There's a lot of folks in Ashland that work at the food bank, the Ashland Food Bank, that come together to do that. I know there's a movement afoot now to get affordable housing in Ashland. So there's folks getting together to do that, whether they're religious or not, go to a church or not, doesn't matter. They're just community involvement. The OLLI classes, as I said, the libraries. There's also interest groups. I know there's hiking or backpacking groups in the where I live that are all for people north of 60 years of age. So they select hike trails that are appropriate for that kind of group. So there's all kind of interest groups. There are many ways. It's just fun dancing. I know people enjoy, square dancing and other kinds of things. There's a variety of ways, but I'm going to come back. It's that personal relationship that'll pull us into that.
Mhm.
For a lot of folks, it's scary to just show up at a place where I don't know anybody. I don't know what's going on. So the more relational we can be, I think there is a component that has a dramatic impact on our physical health and mental health. the more interconnected we are with other human beings.
And you don't have to exchange numbers and names. I found out. I belong to a aqua power club.
So
Pools.
why? Good.
And
girl.
I mean there's 25 women that show up at 6 o'clock every morning. Swim. I don't know their names, but we're together. And I had a conversation with a couple of the men who started coming, and it was a different class. And this one fellow said, "Yeah, I've been coming for 3 years. I know those guys, but I don't know anybody. I don't know after this class together, and we're enjoying it, and we're enjoying it with each other."
So a few minutes ago, I asked you to talk to move out of yourself, talk about community stuff. I kind of want to go back a little bit, heads up that in a little bit, maybe we'll shift to questions that people in the room have. I want to ask, this is related but different, I think, from the first question I asked. Here I want to ask, and it might be another strange question, is there a person who you're in relationship with now, at any age, who is aging in a way that you particularly admire? You think of someone who they're kind of modeling something that, okay, there's something there I can really learn from. And what might that be? You want to jump in now? Have at it.
I'm 83 and my 4 years old. My first story is hospice. The woman came in and said, "Hey, handsome." I think it's very hard of hearing. I had no idea in the last 4 years. Now I have hearing aids. It's pretty important. I haven't heard either one of you talk about hearing.
Great.
I'm just too young for that.
Great. So, and with hearing in mind, I'm going to try to repeat a short version also online and hope you through this. So, I think your question, and please, if this is right, is shouldn't we be talking more about how hearing might be a barrier to connecting in ways that, okay.
With the great love of communicating, it would be very difficult.
Okay.
But I have a tremendous
Great.
support. Said at 70, you're 70, you must not be losing your hearing.
So let's have these guys talk about hearing, and thank you for bringing that right up. Fred.
My wife calls that I really have a hearing problem. But normally I don't, but there are times. That's a huge barrier.
Do you see that in a lot of people that you
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, it's also visually impaired people. I mean, we have to look at just the expanse of human capability. You know, some of the challenges, and we're here, we can drive, we can see, we can read, we can hear, watch. But there are just segments of our population that are not engaged, or we're not as engaging as well. So that's another whole group of people of all ages, matter of fact, that we need to be much, much, much more mindful and caring.
Can I then combine that question with the question I had started to ask, which is, anyone in your life who's navigating, let's say, real hearing challenge or seeing challenge? Some challenges have gotten harder, and you're learning from the way they're doing that. I'm asking about one person because I think the specific might be helpful.
I'll just talk about my late mother because that was more my experience. And she refused to acknowledge she was losing her hearing, and then received aid after aid after aid until the doctor said, "You have your options at this time," and was unwilling to learn how to communicate in a different way. And it was very, very, very sad for us. But we were still, and we were starting to do things with her so she could see that started to shift the way of embracing her and her challenges so that we still feel connected. And I can imagine there's a number of other people like that as well.
But shifting the actual way of communicating was one way to do it.
Yes, yes.
Fred, anybody pop to mind with this question for you?
You know, I'm just going to track off what Andrea shared. My mom died at 44. She really wasn't out of control and had struggled with cancer for 37 years. And I had just moved from college to help care for for her in her last months. Done it. I didn't. And it was hard. And she struggled. Not an easy thing, but what I learned and what it taught me that was so valuable, served me so well for my whole life, is that opportunity to be with her in the struggle of it, pulled a kindness and strength out of me I didn't know I had. And it brought her and my relationship so deeply close together that, as difficult as that was, I wouldn't trade that for nothing. It shaped the man I feel that that gift my mother gave me is the greatest gift she gave me. And so the folks that I know that are able to navigate, going back to where we started earlier in the evening, the release of control of their lives in a kind and gracious way, allowing those of us that love them to come in and provide support. That's the way I want to do it. That's why I became a hospice chaplain. I want to learn how to die well, because death freaks me out. That's why I became a hospice chaplain. I'm going there. I want to do it well. And so what I've learned is I can gracefully let go of those where I get stuck and those things I try to control and allow people into my world. That's the way I want it. That's the
You just said gracefully, and while you said gracefully, I thought of you. That's one of the words that I associated with you, Andrea, and I wonder, like, what do you think about approaching this particular transition? What do you think that holds for you as you think about
Well, again, I learned from my parents as well. I mean, my mother was 90, passed away. My father was 96. And I'm beginning to echo some of their patterning, like repeating the same story over and over. My son will say, Mom, you told me that the other day. And I said, Mijo, let me tell you, when your dad would tell me a story, I mean, he couldn't remember what he had for breakfast, but he could tell you what this morning, but he could tell me what he had at some camp in 1942 during the war. And I said, this is what I did, Mijo. He would tell me something, and then I would ask him a question to veer off a little bit more and get more deeply into the story. And so that started to click things off with him. He got to the point he didn't realize he was repeating stories, but I was getting the benefit of learning more about deepening that dimension of his life that I would not know after he's gone. And that's one little piece. I mean, the element of grace, sharing that a lot with strangers. All of a sudden, I'm having to do that with my family, my loved ones. And that, I mean, I just am so grateful for the time and the patience. You take the time to sit and query and go deeper and deeper.
Thanks. I want to have a shift to questions from you. I know, Fred, you mentioned you mentioned that you had brought something short that you might want to read, and I wonder if now's the time to do that, and then we can shift to questions.
I brought a poem. I don't like to travel without poetry, even though I'm not a poet. This is a poem by an Irish guy named John O'Donoghue, and brilliant. And this is a poem he wrote his mother. So, it's just, but it's called Benacht, which is just the Celtic word for blessing. And so this is what he wrote for his mom. On the day when the weight deadens on your shoulders and you stumble, may the clay dance to balance you. When your eyes freeze behind the gray window, the ghosts of loss get into you. May a flock of colors, indigo, green, red, azure blue, awaken in you a meadow of delight. And the canvas phrase in a flaw of thought, and a stain of ocean blackens beneath you. May there come across the waters a path of yellow to bring you safely home. May the nourishment of the earth be yours. May the clarity of the light be yours. May the fluency of the ocean be yours. And may the protection of the ancestors be yours. So may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life. That is Banach by John O'Donohue.
Thank you. Yeah. So thank you for what you've already said, and I wanna see what questions there are in the room, with the caveat that I'm going to try to condense your question into something that's audible for people that are watching and listening online. So if you want to if you have a question, maybe raise your hand and say what you got, and then I apologize in advance for however I butcher it as I try to translate it. Anybody ready to jump in with something? Why don't we start here? Great.
Community Center, which used to be the Senior Center, but we decided to change the name. Get everybody. Things that cost you $8. Meatloaf. And that's trying to encourage people to get back together amongst each other. And make it for every age, and not just seniors or kids.
Can I try to share that back to people
Yes,
calling in
please.
online? And thank you for that. Can I just ask what your name is? Scott, thank you. So Scott, if I have it right, working at what used to be called the Rogue River Senior Center and shifted to the Rogue River Community Center, in part to get not just seniors, but multi-generational people together, doing things like hosting dinners, including Meatloaf, which seems important to mention by name. It was good. And that's as a way of signaling a shift in the way that center was thinking about its work. Great. Thank you. Thanks for that work, and thanks for bringing that here. We go to Josh, and then we'll come over here.
But it's also each present tax members good for something that help comfortable.
So how can people who are aging share some wisdom, some advice about it with younger family members as that's happening? Great, thanks.
I think younger family members have to be curious and not come with preconceived notions, because something happens, and we did clearly in the healthcare will tend to families where the younger ones turn to parents. They turn into parents. They have a role reversal, and we've got to figure a way of doing that with understanding much more gracefully. It's important, and I don't know how we start to learn it until somebody raises the question. All of a sudden, mom and dad are doing things that they shouldn't be doing it, and we need to let them know that. There has to be some real intentionality to do it in such a good way, and there are resources, but has to start with a willingness to know that you don't have all the answers. You need to learn.
Brett, that's on you.
Yeah, a couple of things. So I think offering love is a big deal, and not guilt trips. So like every time I call my son, he knows something broken in my house that he's going to come fix. He's going to stop answering the phone. And I was with a patient one time that was a teacher, not the way you would want to teach you. I mean, I learned I don't want to do that. So I'm with this person who was in a hospital bed, looking forward to her daughter coming to show up for a visit. Your daughter in a couple of weeks, and this person had oxygen and couldn't get out, bedbound, and just so the daughter calls. I'm sitting there because of the hearing thing, puts it on the speakerphone so everybody 3 houses away can hear. And the daughter says, Mom, I can't come home this weekend because I got a job. I can't believe it. I've been looking for a job for 2 years. And this person's going to hire me, and they're going to pay me something like $30 an hour. I can't believe it. And the person I was going to visit, my patient, grabs the phone and goes, well, I hope I'm still alive when you get there. All right. That was a big learning for me. I don't want to do that because I wanted to grab the phone and say, oh, how wonderful. I'm so proud of you. $30 an hour is cheap. They should be paying you more. Get here when you can. So I want to invite my loved ones. I want to see what's beautiful. I don't want to use that. I don't want it always to be a problem. What can I do to enrich their life? How can I make them better people? So it's a reciprocation. And it's not, but when I have a need, I want to be able to say, look, this is broken. I need some help. So
We're going to go here and then we'll come up here. So,
That's
yeah.
what it is, that conversation.
A little patient. Can we, is it all right if you hold it for 1 second? We'll go here and then come up. Thank you. Okay, so a question for Scott about how Rogue River is funding that shift and the gathering they're doing at the center.
And we accept donations and we sell them. Everything that we sell at the thrift store, all the funds stays in the community. And they do charge for the meals. It's $8. That's beverage, cake, everything. So it's not much burden on somebody.
Okay.
And if there's a time where somebody needs a meal, make sure they.
Okay, great. So paid for in part by a thrift store, in part by charging a modest amount for the meals. Funding senior programs.
Very difficult.
Very difficult. Okay.
Where you read every week about how there's not enough money for whatever.
Okay, so the question of funding these things and how to make that happen.
Also, the largest townspeople is senior women.
Okay, and so I'm going to say that into this so that everyone online hears too, and that the largest group of women is senior women. Grove. Thank you. Do either of you want to speak to that question before we come over here? Yeah, calling attention to it seems like maybe clearly an important part of it. Can we go? Thanks for your patience.
Oh, no problem. Before about kids helping the elder and the elder helping the kids. And I have a friend from Washington that has 3 children and just they love each other to death. And the daughters especially, because it'd be hard compared to the men. Let's face it, there's a difference. Anyway, they just want to help. And she doesn't want them to help until she needs it. What I wanted to say was they are such a loving family. They open this up. They talk about it. So, so that they're comfortable with each other. Even though the daughter wants to help more than she should, and the mother doesn't want them to help as much as they think they need help. But they talk about it, and so they work it out really great. So communication is really critical. And of course, grace and love help.
that does.
So the challenge of, in this family that you're talking about, actually both sides want to offer something that maybe isn't fully wanted yet, but what's important is they're both talking about it, both coming from a good place.
Getting close to 60 now.
Yeah.
Did you notice how I didn't repeat into the mic what you said about men and women being different? We have a question back here. Yeah.
I'm 66, and I notice as I get older, I appreciate older people more. And I don't know, it's like 20 years ago, I probably wouldn't stop to talk to anybody about what their life was like. But now it's really kind of interesting. I'm almost thinking about asking this to what he did because they're interesting. And again, I found, and the COVID kind of highlighted this. That's what we're all about here. When we couldn't meet with people, there's 3 friends and I were out going to a house. We didn't have a house, so we're living in it. We actually want to be inside, so we're socially, that 6 feet separated around the fire. They were so desperate. We kept it up. The bonfires got away, the house was built. weeks ago, still meet at 8 o'clock in the morning, and Bill's one of them. It's not like 10 or 11. But it's important.
I hope you speak me.
Correct. Important to keep those conversations going, the connections going. And I do notice that I'm much open now, at least I'm retired from that kind of stuff. Much more open. You actually ask somebody, what do you do for a living? You know, everybody has a story, and then I guess it's our job to get the story out.
So as you talked about getting more curious as you get older, I hear Fred making quiet noises.
Well, I just saw online, one of those news feeds I get, whatever. It was in a different country, Kate, but I think it was they call them human libraries, where they have time where people just come and they tell each other their story, their life story. So instead of checking out a book or a magazine, you come and you listen to someone share about their story. And I know our mutual friend Mark Yaconelli, Hold the Hearth. We have a hearth here in Grants Pass. The sharing of the story. There is nothing that cements relationships and connections like sharing stories. So, but I thought of the human library that I read about today.
One of the best parts of sharing stories is that better.
Andrea, did you want to speak to this at all? No?
No, it's fine.
Thoughts you want to share while we're still in the formal part of the and this is very formal, but we're still in the formal part of this. I should note that Fred has some books over there that he wrote. He's got a couple books. Actually, one of those books today was published in Chinese.
Yeah, a Chinese edition of one of my books came out. So. Well, it's out. I don't know how many it's sold, but
It's out.
Nice.
And I also want to note that Kate Lasky from the Josephine Community Library Foundation, well, the community library is over there, so there's stuff to check out there. Debbie from All Care. There's some stuff from Oregon Humanities too. And I should mention that if you're finding this conversation engaging, what we've tried to do with some of these events is build in something a few days later where there's a online conversation where you're just talking to each other with the help of a facilitator. So my colleague Roselle Medina on November 9th is facilitating a follow-up conversation to this by Zoom. You could be talking to people all around the state or elsewhere. And that's easy to find. We can give you information about it, or it's online to find. It's safe for people online to continue this conversation.
And Adam, this is it's being recorded.
It is being
And so if people had any questions or comments, they could email you or share this with others and
this will be up on Oregon Humanities website and YouTube channel, so easy to share. Yeah, thank you for saying that.
If you have very hard questions, it's Andrea Cano is who you want to ask.
And we have a question right here, and then we'll come up to Kate.
And I wanted to let y'all know that we do have a lifelong learner program at RCC.
Oh, good.
62 and older. You can get free tuition and take a certain number of courses. So you can call and ask about that if you're interested. So that's another way to make connections in the community. We actually hosted a human library last spring at RCC.
Yeah.
So check our Facebook pages for things like that. And I just wanted to ask, I am in that same generation as Adam, where I have a teenager and kids who are 80 and 91. And I've been trying to educate myself about, how I can support them and connect with them. And just basically, I would just like some advice or resources or books that like how to acknowledge parents or your loved ones talk about death, or like because don't have a great relationship with death in the U.S. And it's like when parents are like, "Oh, I'm getting older, I'm gonna die," and you're like, "Don't say that," you
That's
shut
right.
it down.
That's right.
Need to say that, but it's very comfortable. Like, everything's fine. So if you have any advice about how to have a dialogue about it.
So I'm going to try to just feed that back a little bit again. That's good. First, Rowe Community College has lifelong learning programs for people done the human library. It's about being in this sort of bridge generation where you're caring for both younger and older, and especially the challenge around talking about the hard stuff when it comes out. When I say the hard stuff, I'll just name it as explicitly as you did. How do you talk about death and dying? How do you get comfortable with that? Are there resources that help us think about that?
Well, we used to talk about it a lot, didn't we, dear Fred? Oregon Humanities continues to have a conversation about talking about dying. And one of the things I started to use, of course, as chaplains, we also have a whole process of that, is just to sit with your family and say, well, we know how to say hello. We've got to figure out how to say goodbye. So think of an experience of when you did lose somebody, or maybe you watched a movie. What did that look like? What did that feel like? How could that have been better? And so it raises a whole lot of other things around it, cultural pieces, uh, fear of living, dying, health, fear of losing somebody, even when somebody's ill. So it starts when you just to have a very quiet query and don't have all the decisions made in that conversation, but it's the beginning. Right?
Well, I've got 2 books on the subject. But honestly, here's the biggest thing of when you can have that kind of conversation, don't shut it down because it can actually strengthen and deepen the relationship. To be able to talk about something scary with somebody that you trust really can strengthen the relationship in so many ways. Now you want to pick your shots. At Thanksgiving dinner table is not the time to say, but I do know families that every year, the day after Thanksgiving, while the family's in town, look, we're going to have a talk. We're going to talk about this tomorrow morning over coffee. Here's what I want. Here's what I don't want. I want you kids to know if this happens, and that can actually strengthen and deepen the relationship, which is the most important thing we can do at this age of our lives, to strengthen the relationship. So whatever, don't shut it down, but you also can't make it happen. That's not the helpful thing.
And I see 2 hands. Can I just say I have this? I'm jumping out of moderator just a little bit to say, like, I was driving down to Grants Pass this morning and I called my dad, who's 80, who lives in another country. And I would say our conversations are generally 3 or 4 minutes long every couple of weeks, and they don't touch on the heavy stuff. And I asked him how he was doing. He said he was doing okay. He was feeling a little weak. And then at a certain point, he brought up, he said, I know you write in a diary some, right? Like, how did you start doing that? And this is something I've been doing for 33 years. He's never really brought it up before. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I've been writing in it every day for 33 years. And so he said, like, I was thinking maybe I should do something like that, but I don't really know how to start. And so, for me, this was one of these. It was a big opportunity to go. You don't have to know how to start. I still don't know what I'm doing. Maybe you start by going. You're not sure why you're writing, but write for 10 minutes a day this week. Let's check in again next week, see how it goes. So I do think it is. Some of it feels to me like this attention to little windows. Mm-hmm. There were 2 hands, and so can we go to Kate and then we'll come back?
I was just going to say something. Kate.
Oh, great.
We have different, but we have displays in different things, so people really want to be able to access. And there are so many really, really good books about death and dying that are not necessarily depressing or anything. But really speak to that need of wanting to understand the process and different ways of approaching it and how to deal with it. And there's just a huge range of books that do that. And I think that would be a great service in this community without it. And I don't think it would be perceived negatively at all.
I have a couple ideas while you're talking. First, I would want to be
Nina Grayson.
And Kate, can I just say that Nina just suggested that the library might focus in some way or have some stuff, resources around that.
And it goes, right? It just happens for a little while, and then maybe it touches some people, and then it doesn't others. So I think a snippet guide maybe on our website where we're actively thinking out, there's the road, river, center. There's other ways people can connect, put together a subject line and say, I don't know what to call it. I'm sure people figure that out.
That would be wonderful. That would be better too.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
And can I just point back to what Andrea pointed to? So one of the things Oregon Humanities Trust is have an ongoing catalog of community conversations that any community organization, whether it's a public library or house of worship or a corporation, can request. And one that we've had in for years is called Talking About Dying. The reason it's in the catalog now is because several years ago, Fred and Andrea, along with Jennifer Sasser, who was going to be here with Fred and Andrea, and 5 other people, they led about 50 conversations in a year around the state called Talking About Dying. And now that's available. That conversation is still available for anyone that wants to bring it in. There are plenty of other places to do that too. I say that to say, trying to find resources that are out there. We would love to have our jacket pulled on for that. We would love to connect you with people like Fred and Andrea who are leading these really thoughtful conversations, especially in public context where you're talking across, it's not just family, you're talking to people who are different from you but have similar concerns. So we'd love for you to, again, bother us about that. It's easy to find on our website, or you can just find me, and I left some cards over there too. Maybe if there's one more question before we wrap this formally, and then we can start talking to each other. Anybody with another question or thought before one last word? Kate? Yeah.
Talked about or thought about when it doesn't go well. Relationships are hard. People have personality. Families don't always function smoothly. And we're talking about something that we're all experiencing differently. And there's fear involved and a need for believing, but sometimes the divide is greater based on other barriers to communicating. What have you found that helps in situations for those of us who want to connect, but we're managing across maybe abuse or health concerns that are deeper grade or generational dysfunction? We're dropping. Like, how do you what are some tips for that?
So Kate's asking a softball question here at the end.
25 words or less.
What about in the really tough situations where it's actually hard to connect for all the reasons we did, whether it's relationship challenges or other things that are just, it's not working? What might you do, or when it's not working?
I'll go first and then give my wise colleague the privilege of correcting anything you say. So a couple of things. Look, there's no magic bullet, no easy answer. The things that helped me personally, one was to realize I am not God's only solution to this problem. There's a lot of human beings. And so I would meet people in hospice that wanted nothing to do with their family, or the family wanted nothing to do with them. I don't know the years of history and baggage brought it to that place. But those folks could still get up in a facility and connect with caregivers in the facility, or connect with the hospice team, and a chaplain and a social worker and a nurse could be really kind, even if the family wanted nothing to do with it. And they would have really been really mean to their family, or abuse, or awful things. They don't deserve a lot of love and affection. But for my money, they still do. And they do it to me. I can come and help. So realize I'm not the only one that can fix this. If I'm a family member, it's not all on me. There's been issues of abuse or addictions. It's way hard. And you never want to put yourself in a position where you're going to continue to be harmed. That's not helpful. But there are other human beings that can rise to the occasion and And then the other side of the coin, I've learned that pain is a great change agent. And so even as a hospice chaplain, I would meet people that were just adamant, I'm going to get better, I'm going to get better, God's going to cure me, God's going to cure me. And they were really mean to the family and all this. And I would just sit back and wait, well, cancer's going to knock some sense into it at some point. And eventually the pain got so bad that their barriers came down and they let people in. Now, it doesn't always, nothing works all the time. But so I trust in the pain is a great change that even somebody as thick-headed as me can change my ways when the pain gets bad enough. And the other is to trust that there's other human beings involved, and maybe I'm not the one to get what's needed right now because of our history or because of what I represent. Those are two thoughts anyway.
And I echo exactly what you're saying, Fred. The element of being Dorothy pulling the curtain behind the wizard, and to really look at somebody's humanity without judgment, because you don't know everything. And I think sometimes we put these facades, and these are the facades that are talking to each other, even within families, and we don't get behind. And the curiosity to just sit down and saying, how are you feeling today? Or not coming even from that, what the issue is. And heavens, I mean, the last 5 years, our society is just rent. It is. And family, social, politically, religious, all of that. And it just seems that we have such chasms. Chasms. And so the element is, how do we take that first step into the chasm, without fear, and just be caring and loving. And it's not just the words. I mean, there's just things that will spark. We don't communicate everything that we're feeling and seeing. So it's opening up a new set of eyes and ears when you sit with somebody, having some coffee, just start talking very, very simply about things. And just, it's an element of trust. Remember, most of the chasms are because we distrust each other and we don't want to hear each other anymore. And how do we start to bridge that with a level of humanity that has been buried? And how do we recapture that again?
So yeah, please go ahead, and then we'll get here, and then we'll probably close the formal after these two comments. Yeah.
Okay. Family, and I've been married to my husband for 41 years, and totally come from different backgrounds. Very vocal. Women were very vocal in the family, and in this family we're a little less vocal. But with my father-in-law and my mother-in-law, my father-in-law is gone. This love was always, no matter what happened, you might get mad at each other. He may say to me, "My wife did it. I don't understand why you can't do it." I go, "She did it, but did she like it?" So I mean, we have all this stuff. So he died 4 years ago, and I don't count how many great grandchildren we had, but at the time, one of the oldest grandchildren, we were all there. Everybody was there. Everybody, we had a whole day down by the river where people were sharing, loving, and we knew it was going to be soon. And she wrote something about how he's going to be in a better place and how much that we will take of his teaching, the love that he had given all of us. And just a beautiful, not a poem, but a beautiful note. I wish it was around. But it was so moving. And even though you would never have this on my side, but this was unbelievable. How do we even capture that at time? We had lost somebody that just believed, who had major health issues that were, I didn't know if I was going to live or die. It came to, okay, she's alive still. So it just was, you need to share with your people.
So thank you for that. And I'm not going to try to sum it up except to say I think you're talking about the power of gathering and ritual. So if either of you
Well, and recognize, I mean, there's an element of affirmation
Hmm.
and understanding and affirming pieces there that maybe weren't anticipated, but it is the element of again, grace,
Hmm.
right? And embracing and receiving what was shared.
can we, yeah.
Senior Center on 9th Street is having a free 5-week
Hmm.
class on writing your autobiography.
Hmm.
So being yourself first,
Uh,
2 years, from 2 to 4.
Great.
Ellen Jennifer from the Senior and Disability Youth Center is going to be facilitating it. So in terms of relationships, you begin with writing your own full will.
Hmm.
Why my life is meaningful to me.
Hmm.
What I'm doing about it now. Not doing about it. And what I have classes to do about it. Historical episodes that you want to put down on paper for your family members. So that's all free in your center. Stay from 2 to 4 and sign up.
Great. Thank you. Just going to say it here so everybody there hears at the Senior Center on 9th. 5 Wednesdays, 2 to 4. And starting with autobiography, writing an autobiography, and how that's also a way to connect. I want to make sure to say before we close this, I want to say a big thanks to Debbie and Josh from Alt Care. Thank you for making this possible. I want to say a huge thanks to Kate Lasky. Thank you all for coming out. You probably didn't know what you were doing. Thanks for being here. I want to say the biggest thanks to Andrea and Fred for doing this work and talking with us tonight. Thank you so much.
I have a question.
And one last.
One quick, I don't have books like Fred does. He's an incredible writer. But I just want to say that one of my books of my life is sitting right over here. Gary Woodward, who we reconnected after how many years? We went to elementary school together in Downey, California. I mean, we are connecting and bridging in those stories that we haven't had in a while. And he was a gentleman who lost everything in Lahaina and is now in Medford with his friend Rachel, just kind of recapturing his life and everything. So thank you for coming. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Thanks. It's all good here. Yeah. So let's keep talking informally and say thanks to the people online that joined us. Please remember November 9th if you'd like to continue this particular conversation. Thanks so much. Thank you. Yeah. All right. We'll see. Who knows if it worked? It worked in the room. Yeah.